Hello, my fellow learners, and especially my fellow nerds. I have done school in the garden, I have done school on overnight trains, I've done school in campers, and I've done school in a treehouse. It's called homeschooling, but the entire point of it is that it can take place anywhere. Now, I'm a third culture kid because my parents' humanitarian work kept them constantly on the move, so public schooling wasn't really an option for my family. We have a saying in the homeschool community that you don't know how mixed up your life is until someone points out that you live at school, you work abroad, and you go home for vacation. But that's a topic for another speech. Homeschool is something that's still very unfamiliar in Europe. So I have had to explain the concept, the culture, the challenges so many times. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the homeschool answer shirt. If I had had this when I was school-aged, I would have worn it all the time. Yes, in my pajamas. Yes, I take tests, and I dislike them as much as you do. Yes, I leave the house, otherwise you wouldn't be reading this. Yes, I had class today. In fact, I'm in class right now. Yes, I'm socialized. Yes, I have friends. So, to change things up a little, I thought I would give you a list of the pros and the cons of homeschool. Well, at least from my point of view. I trust that it will intrigue you and maybe provide a glimpse into an alternate way of instructing young minds. So, first pro, no lugging heavy school bags every day. The con, you never get out of anything because you forgot your book at home. And the teacher always knows whether you actually wrote that essay or not. Next pro, and I feel like this one is simply not mentioned enough, but cleaner bathrooms. Of course, the con is you cleaned it. Pro, you get to personalize the curriculum. In high school, I got credit for typing all of the poetry from Lord of the Rings. I hit 80 words per minute, and I can still quote loads of it. Con is a mother with a European education teaching American history and math. I remember her exclaiming, "It's not how you spell Charles Marteau." And, Americans make division so complicated. Do it like this instead. And me going, no, that looks way too hard. So yeah, sorry Europe, this is still the only way I know how to do long division. And please don't get me started on the subject of writing dates. But pro, you get to declare that school is out for anything, from birthdays to snack time. Con, sick days are rare. I caught malaria and I still had to study. Pro, you get to use whichever learning style suits you best, whether you are a visual or an auditory or a tactile learner. And you get to use Monopoly and Scrabble to practice math and English. Con, if you thought that sick days were rare, the weather is never an excuse. Oh, is there a cyclone tearing toward the island where you live? Then you hang blankets over the windows and carry on. Did the power go out? Well, then you light candles, and you keep writing your essay about, well, Chernobyl, incidentally. Because you see, candles on a desk are safe if the teacher is sitting there too. Pro, I got to read all my friends' textbooks. Con, which version of history to believe? Was Drake a mere pirate, meriting one line in an American history book? Or was he Sir Francis Drake, daring buccaneer, beloved of Queen Elizabeth, defender of his homeland from conquest by the Spaniards, and the first captain to successfully circumnavigate the globe? Pro, you have your teacher's full attention. Con, you have your teacher's full attention. Pro, and okay, full disclosure, my sister calls this a con, but you get to visit castles, caves, museums, natural wonders, architectural marvels, just because they're there. I loved visiting a serpentarium in Blankenberg, Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in Dublin, the Scientastic Museum in Brussels, a fishing boat in Kenya, countless exhibitions, pretty much every single castle in Ireland, all of which we just happened across and strolled into. See, homeschooling teaches you to love education because it's not about filling in the hours or the pages or the checkboxes. It's about filling your brain. It's about taking one thing that fascinates you and making that a gateway to learning about 100 other things. I do have to say, though, it's a little bit funny that up to exactly a year ago, when I told people that I was homeschooled, they would shake their heads and they'd be like, no, that's impossible. I've never heard of such a thing. Yeah, they don't do that anymore. Of course, you do have to realize that homeschool is structured on very different terms from public school. The teacher is not there to control or to dictate the student's actions. Rather, the student works independently, they progress at their own pace, and via whichever route suits them best. Tell you what, raise your hand if you've heard the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Have you heard that one? See, well, my learning style is best summed up as, give me the 1,000 words and keep your picture. Whereas I have some peers who only learn the multiplication table because the entire thing was put to song. Or others who could tell you every detail you could possibly want to know, and probably quite a few you don't, about major battles or massive historical events, because they reenacted them in Lego. And a teacher who observes and cares can do their best work by enabling these different styles of learning. I had the blessing of a mother who was a dedicated educator. She devoted herself to ensuring that we had as well-rounded an education as she could possibly give us. Education does not need to be boring. Just put in a modicum of effort, which nowadays, frankly, just means scrolling some keywords on Google or looking through some relevant accounts on your favorite social media platform. Massive shout out to Pinterest here. But the most important thing my mom did for me was to pass on her ardor for giving other people knowledge. Which brings me to my next point, my lifelong love of teaching. One of my earliest and fondest memories is as being 5 and 6 years old and helping to care for a 1-year-old boy. I would feel so grown up and responsible whenever I was seated with little Sammy on my lap and a picture book in front of us. I would do all the pointing and exclaiming that anyone who has taught young children is familiar with, and I would glow with pride when he sat with me and happily absorbed the knowledge that comes from flashcards. To my memory, that was the beginning of a career in teaching that I have been passionate about every day of my life since. Terry Pratchett, my favorite author, who died 6 years ago today, he said, "You know what is the greatest tragedy in the whole world? It's all the people with talents who never find out what it is they're good at. It's all the sons who become blacksmiths because their fathers were blacksmiths. It's all the people who could be really fantastic flute players who grow old and die without ever seeing a musical instrument. And so they become bad plowmen instead. It's all the people who never even find out." There's another writer who said, "Books may well be the only true magic," and I couldn't agree with her more. But let me tell you, watching the light of understanding dawn on a little face as a new skill clicks and they realize they can now navigate the world with an extra helping of self-confidence and independence, oh, that's as close to magic as it gets. You know, I wondered once how it was that influencers could possibly spend their every waking moment documenting what they ate and what they wore and where they went and who they went with for a social media moment. But then I realized that's exactly how I am about teaching. I can't help but try to say something educational when I'm around a child, because seeing everything as an opportunity to learn or help someone else learn has just been ingrained in me. Notice, though, that I said educational, not necessarily academic. As vital as scholastics are, sometimes what a person needs to hear the most is, to quote a third author in fewer minutes, "You is kind, you is smart, you is important." Learning is a thing of beauty. It's a joy forever. It's a right. And empowering others through education is a privilege. Learning is easier than we've ever had it before. Although on the other hand, we are also currently facing difficulties that we never have. The good news is that homeschoolers have been trained to navigate those since day one. And so, I'd like to return to those pros and cons and tell you what they have taught me. The first, most obvious one, is that school doesn't need to happen in any specific location. Education happens where and when you want it to. You decide, and it can happen. Look at it as getting to learn at home instead of having to learn at home. Build, experiment, and recreate that thing you saw in that YouTube video with your hands. But, you know, also with caution because YouTube. And take all of those sources that you have for researching and just dive in. Find out the facts about what you're interested in. The results will be fascinating and sometimes even useful. They say that you don't really fully understand something unless you can explain it to a 6-year-old. And the best way to learn is to teach. So think of all the tutors, the mentors, the teachers that you have had in your life, or the ones that you wish you would have had, and try to fill that role for someone else. And finally, to circle back to Terry Pratchett, as I inevitably do, helping all the people with talents find out what those are is a craft, a craze, and a calling that I cherish engaging in. And I urge you to try it as well.